Last week, if I had to give a title to our shmooze last week, it was freedom, right? And the introduction of understanding freedom. To review, why is it important to understand freedom specifically now? Right? Why is it important? Why are we discussing freedom? And why am I discussing freedom and how we should understand freedom? Why is it important right now, Benny? Correct. Right? Pesach is the time that we were freed from Mitzrayim. It's the Zman Cheruseinu. And like we pointed out last week, right, the important last step of freedom is that fourth cup, right? The fourth cup is for the fourth step of freedom.
From the Gola?
Velakachti, right? Velakachti, which is the fourth cup. That's the final step of freedom, of becoming fully free, which was receiving the Torah. And we discussed the idea that really for a person to be free, what it means is that his neshama, his brain, his seichel, his thinking part of him is in charge. His thinking, rational, right, logical part of him is in charge, and not his body, not his emotions. His emotions are but used as a tool by his brain. When a person is being run by his brain, that is a free person. And that's what happened when we got the Torah. We got the Torah. Hashem gave us a step-by-step playbook about how to live life on this world in a way whereby your brain, your neshama, your seichel is in charge. Not being pulled off in every different direction. Now, this week I'm going to discuss the first step. The first and most important step towards freedom. Okay, so we got the Torah. So now how do I become free? I become free by doing what? By keeping the whole Torah. So that's it. I just have to keep the whole Torah. Everything's equal. Is there a place to start? Is there a place that I should grow towards? Like how does the process go? So we're going to discuss now the first step. And this is something which I think is particularly important for high school, middle school boys, particularly important for them to understand. And girls, perhaps more to girls actually, but especially to boys. You know, I cannot even tell you, the first time that I worked with, my first job in teaching was I taught 12th grade boys. Okay, I taught 12th grade. I was a 12th grade Rebbe. And the boys that I was working with and dealing with, they were already they were past the whole middle school, high school stage. They were already in 12th grade. Okay? In my class, one day I said, okay guys, we're going to have a special lunch. They said, well, what are we having for lunch? I said, maybe I'll bring in pizza or something. They said, pizza? What are you talking about? I want to go out for some meat. I'm like, yeah, but I'm saying I come from Kew Gardens Hills to Kew Gardens, I'm going to pick up meat and then it's going to be cold and then after the class we're going to eat. They're like, Rabbi, we all got cars. We'll just jump in our cars and drive to Kew Gardens Hills. What's the big deal? And that was like an epiphany of oh wow, I'm talking to a whole different group of guys. You know, everyone in the class had a car. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking to guys that were on the other end of the spectrum. They weren't in the middle school, high school, stages. So my first job that I actually dealt with middle school boys was when I was a director of student services, I guess an assistant principal in Yeshiva of South Shore. And the first time that a boy came into my office saying this, I was a little bit taken aback. But then the second time, and the third time, and the fifth time, and the 10th time, and the 20th time, I got used to it. Okay? The conversation went like this. You ready? You ready? A boy sent out of class. His teacher sent him out of class. Go to Rabbi Kramer's office. Comes into Rabbi Kramer's office. I said, so what'd you do? He said, nothing. Nothing. Your teacher sent you here because you did nothing. Then like a little bit talking later, is like, well, I punched Shlomi in the face. You punched Shlomi in the face? So how did you think you did nothing? Well, Shlomi smirked at me. I said, okay, so Shlomi smirked at you, so therefore you punched him in the face? So he's like, well, he made me do it. I'm like, he made you do it? What are you talking about? You want to tell me that you did something wrong, but there's extenuating circumstances, as they say. You recognize I did something wrong, but understand within the context of what happened, maybe it wasn't as bad. It's like someone's on trial, right, for a crime, and then at the end of the trial, they bring in all the character witnesses, right? Character witnesses. Where they bring in witnesses that say, well, listen, you have to understand, Judge, even if it's true that he did X, Y, and Z crime, but he's really a good kid, he really made a mistake, he was really down on his luck that day, and therefore, Judge, when you're sentencing him, maybe you should take that into account to give him a light sentence. But of course he did something wrong. But that's not what I had coming to my office. I had boys coming to my office saying, no, I didn't do anything. You didn't do anything? How did you not do anything? Isn't Shlomi's nose bleeding and isn't he on the floor? Like how did that happen? Well, he made me do it. So it wasn't even me. It's almost like the boy was trying to tell me that Shlomi basically took my fist and put it into his own nose and gave himself a nosebleed. That's the story that they're trying to tell me. And the first time I heard this, I was like, are you serious? Do you really believe that? Do you really think that Shlomi did nothing? I mean, that you did nothing and it's really all Shlomi's fault when you punched him in the nose? So again, the first time I was like incredulous. The second time, 5th time, 10th time, 20th time, all of a sudden you begin to realize, wait a second, what is going on over here? And I had a conversation with the principal, who I was his assistant, Rabbi Davidowitz. Rabbi Zev Davidowitz. A different Rabbi Davidowitz, his cousin. And Rabbi Zev Davidowitz told me, he said that, yeah, obviously, he deals with this all the time. And there's a line that he quoted to me from someone that he looked at as a mentor who works with boys in the middle school, high school stages and ages. And the line that this person would say to boys that would come in and tell him that are you so weak and powerless? Are you so weak and powerless that Shlomi controls you? Shlomi controls you? Really? And this is the first step. And really, I've come to understand and I've come to study this topic and this issue. Really, the Rambam says this is the first step to being able to become a free person. This is the first step to being able to become a real human being and not being stuck as an enslaved, if you excuse my language, animal. If you want to be able to be a real human being and not be stuck as an enslaved animal, the Rambam says you need to realize this point, which so many people miss. And the point is as follows. You have free will. You have free will. You have choice as to how you act. This is a very, very important lesson. And taken step by step by step, it leads to real, complete freedom. When you realize that you have free will, no one has control over your arm. You do. No one forces you to punch Shlomi in the face. You do. But so many people miss this boat. So many people, they don't even get started. They don't even begin to be able to one day be really free people because they have it all backwards. They think that their behavior is controlled by people around them. If you think that your behavior is controlled by people around you, guess what? You are the lowest type of slave. The lowest type of slave. You have no hope of ever being free.
What?
You're enslaved by everyone around you. You walk around the street. You're enslaved by people that you don't even know. What a sad existence. If you want to be free, you need to get the message. You need to be enlightened about this point. Who controls your behavior? You and only you. And let me tell you, what's the end of the game? What's the end of the game? Because we could all recognize that somebody punching someone else in the face and saying that it was the other boy's fault, he made me do it, that's pretty silly. And perhaps we could begin to take responsibility for our actions to some degree. But if you keep growing in this area, what does the end of the game look like? And I'm going to tell you what the end of the game looks like. You ready? Do you guys know the story of Rabbi Akiva? Do you know the story of Rabbi Akiva?
There's many, Rabbi.
Okay? The big story about Rabbi Akiva.
Big one.
The big story about Rabbi Akiva
Big fat one.
is the last few moments of Rabbi Akiva's life. Do you know the story about the last few moments of Rabbi Akiva's life? I actually know a speaker. Itamar's shaking his head yes. I actually know a speaker who said that when he gets a Gadol book, right? Does anybody know about a Gedolim book, right? They have books that they write about Gedolim. When he gets a Gadol book, this is Rabbi Kalish, he flips to the last chapter. What? What's a Gadol? Do you know what a Gadol is? Right? Everybody know Gadol? Like look up, right?
Of course.
Right? Gadol is a great rabbi. A great person, a great rabbi. So when he gets a book about a great rabbi, a great person, he flips to the last chapter. He wants to read about the last few days of that great rabbi's life. Why? Because he said very simply, he said if this person was great and he was growing and growing, the end of his life is when he was the greatest, right? That's when he reached his high point of greatness, was the end of his life. So I want to see, what does the end of the game look like? And he said some people, they pick up a book about a great rabbi, they start reading it, and they never get to the end. They get just discouraged from reading about how he was such a great person right from when he was 3 years old, and then they don't even read the end. But forget about the beginning. He said, read the end. Read the end. Read what does the picture look like of a great man. So what was the final few moments? What was the final episode of Rabbi Akiva's life? Rabbi Akiva was of the greatest men to ever walk this earth. The following happened. The Romans were in charge of Eretz Yisrael at the time. They made a decree. No one is allowed to learn Torah. Rabbi Akiva said, if we don't learn Torah, then we're in real trouble. So not only did he learn Torah, but he wanted to inspire a lot of people to learn Torah. So he gathered great groups of people in public to learn Torah. Now, could you imagine anything crazier? Right? Can you imagine? There's a decree from a dictator regime which says you can't learn Torah. What does he do? He sits in the middle of the town square, gathers large groups of students, and he's teaching them Torah openly, in defiance of the law. Sure enough, the Romans came, and they caught him, and they wanted to make an example out of him. So what did they do? They tied him up to a pier, a pyre. I don't know exactly how you say it. Pier, pyre. P-Y-R-E, right? Right? A pyre is basically, it's something which they use to build a fire around. They tied him to the pyre. They lit the fire, and he was slowly roasted. I'm sorry. Yeah. What they did was that they took hot metal combs that they then raked his body with until he died. Okay? I mixed up the story. Okay, so they took hot metal combs, they heated them up, and they raked his body until he died. What was Rabbi Akiva's reaction? Rabbi Akiva was calm. As they were raking his body, he was calm. He was calm. He wasn't screaming out in agony. He was calm. And it was the time to say Kriya Shema. He said Shema calmly, with happiness. And then he died. Now, how is that possible? How is that possible for someone to be able to do that? And the answer is that that's the end of the game. But that's someone who clearly established to himself who's in charge. My brain or my heart and my emotions? He clearly established my brain's in charge. Whatever my neshama says to do, that's what's going to happen. His body was probably crying out in pain. Crying out in pain. He wasn't going to allow that to throw him off of his course. He realized in a few minutes I'm about to meet Hashem. I'm about to meet my Maker. Do I want to waste those last few minutes crying out in pain and being unable to do anything productive? No. Most of us wouldn't have a choice. But Rabbi Akiva had so perfected himself that he had a choice. And once you have a choice, you realize, of course, it's stupid. Why would you sit there crying out in pain? What does it help? What does it help? Cry out in pain. What's it going to help? You're about to meet God. Don't you want to get in one last Shema before you meet God? Of course. But most people don't have that freedom. They don't have that choice. Because they're too enslaved. They're too stuck. Now, it could be we'll never get to Rabbi Akiva's level. Rabbi Akiva was particularly unbelievable. It could be we'll never get to his level of freedom. But let's start. Let's get to whatever level of freedom that we can. And that starts with recognizing who's in charge of my behavior. Me. If someone else is in charge of my behavior, I have no chance. I have no chance. You read about these people. They walk the streets. Somebody looks at them funny. Somebody doesn't look at them funny. And that's it. It triggers them. And they share these testimonials about them getting triggered as if this is normal. It's not normal. You know what that is? It's sad slaves who are slaves to everyone they pass on the street. What a sad existence. Everyone around you is in charge of you. No one is beyond you. Everyone controls you. Really? Is that what you want life to be? Who do you want to be in charge of you? You or everyone around you? And that's the first step to freedom. Jacob, take it away.